All right, man. This one says, he says, Bedros, I need your help, man. I work 12 hours, have 3 kids, all under the age of 5. I want to hang out with my wife and still be able to work out, but I'm struggling to manage it all. How did you balance your work-life balance?
Yeah, so I actually got this message in my DMs, and I told him, like, hey, man, we'd answer this on the Q&A. I think his name is Teddy. Here's what I got to say to all the Teddys in the world. First off, if you're working 12-hour days, I didn't ask him if that was like he's a police officer or a firefighter or works in the hospital where it's a 12-hour shift, right? If he's working like 4 12s, that means he might have 3 full days off. If he's saying I work 12-hour days because that's just what I need to do to make the money, and I work that 5 days a week, and I'm sure there's some kind of commute to work and back, there's a lot to unpack with this guy. And everyone watching this and listening to this needs to understand that you can't always work 12-hour days and have a family and have 3 kids and expect to get it all done. Like, something's going to crack and give somewhere, right? And you know this to be true because you've got 2 kids and both under 3, right? And so you're married, you've got 2 kids, you work out, you work, and I know you work outside of here because you'll text me throughout the day and night. But there's got to be some level of balance, and that balance needs to show up, start at the place of the core, and the core is the person that you choose to marry. And Teddy here and all the Teddys in the world, y'all got to talk to your wives and go, hey, look, what is important to us? Like, is there a date night? Like, for me and my wife, there's one date night a week that is non-negotiable. Every Wednesday is date night. And I'm busy. We've got kids. Yeah, my kids are 15 and 17, more independent, right? But I look at all my multiple businesses, they're all like little babies. They're all like kids. And so, but my wife and I know that we have this common goal. So it starts with the core. Like, what is your goal with your wife? If you never set the expectations of what our life's goals are going to be, like, am I going to work my nuts off for 3 years, 12 hours a day, and you're going to watch the kids and raise them, but after those 3 years, we saved up so much money that we started a business and therefore now we won back our financial freedom and time freedom? Cool. But if that conversation never happened and you're just like, I'm in the grind 12 hours a day, I still try and work out because I know that's, something that's important to me, still want to hang out with my homies. Yeah, but in the meantime, your wife's like, bro, when's this going to end? Because I'm at home with 3 kids. And if she's not at home, there's babysitters. Now she's working, and it's like, we're just 2 ships passing in the night. And so I'm not busting this guy's balls at all. What I am saying is that as the man of the house, you got to have a conversation with your wife, and we need alignment, right? Alignment means, what is our family's vision? Like, you watch all the other episodes that we do, we talk about in business, we need to have a vision. What do we want from our business? When do we want it by? And what is the daily action steps we're going to do to get there? Well, in family, we need the same thing. What do we want to achieve as a family? Well, we want to own a home. We want to only work 3 days a week. We want that to happen by the time the kids are 10 and 12 and 13 years old. Cool. Then that means these are the things we need to do and how much we need to save and the things we need to say no to and the things we need to say yes to get there. But if both the husband and wife are in alignment and they have one set date night that's non-negotiable, that might be all she needs, where he can take her on a date, because our women need to be seen and heard and appreciated and valued without the phone being on the table, without notifications popping up, without dates being changed. It's not like this week it's a Wednesday and next week it's a Saturday and next week date night is a Monday. It has to be consistent so that our spouse knows that this is a day that's dedicated to us. Because remember, fellas, you didn't choose your kids, you didn't choose your parents, you didn't choose your siblings, you didn't choose a lot of things. The only thing you chose was your wife. You made a conscious decision that this is going to be my life partner. What no one told you and no one told me, so I had to do this later on in my life, was like get in alignment with my wife. Like, hey, what is it that we want? And if we want this as a family, what are our family's core values? What do we want? Okay, we want financial freedom. We want the kids to never see the inside of a daycare. We want them to go to private school. I want my wife to be able to stay home with them. Then, honey, I'm going to have to work my nuts off for like the first 5 years of our kids' lives. But when I do, understand that we need to save and not spend so that we can build a lifestyle for the next 50 years that is very different. And if she said, no, I ain't down for that, then I might have to have gotten a different wife, or I might have to make a different decision. But the wife and I, we came to a mutual agreement. We were on the same page, rowing in the same direction. So 1, he needs to do that. Number 2, find a way to add more value to whatever company you work for, where you work less hours but bring more value, so you bring the same or more amount of money home, right? There's no honor in working 12-hour days the rest of your life. Like, we're not here on this planet to just be like work mules.
Right.
I'm all about hard work and consistent work and focused work, but with an outcome in mind. If it's just like, I'm in the grind to earn, and I know people are going to be like, yeah, but you don't understand, you're rich. Well, I used to be broke. I used to be poor. I used to live in Section 8 housing. I used to, and I used to like try and figure out, do I pay the electric bill or the water bill? Because I couldn't pay both bills. And so I understand what that's like, but sometimes you might have to do some sacrifices, and you might have to work 2 12-hour jobs and forego sleep. Like, I know a dude right now, and I won't mention his name, he makes a lot of money, about $150,000 a year at a job, and he sleeps in cheap motels. His wife kicked him out of the house because they were not in alignment. But he's going to get realigned, and I have no doubt that the wife is going to see a common goal, a mission, and that they are going to ultimately end up in the same household again, and he'll be raising his kids with his wife again. But because there was no alignment, he thought he was working his nuts off for the family. The wife was like, this guy's just working all the time and not around, and I feel like I'm raising the kids by myself and I'm not getting any attention, and what is this all for? How long is this going to go? Because of the miscommunication, she bounced with the kids, went to her parents' house. They had to get rid of the place that they lived, and now he lives in motels, but he's sacrificing now to be able to rebuild and get realigned with his wife. So our man here has a lot of work to do, but it starts with realignment, setting a date night, understanding that if you can add more value to whatever organization you work for, you can make more money in less time, which means you bought back more of your time to spend with your wife, your kids, to relax, to work out, to hang out with the homies, and have an end goal in mind that we're not going to spend on bullshit stuff for a period of time, so that we can maybe launch a business or create investments or a secondary, tertiary income stream, that now we really win our financial freedom. But it all starts with getting into alignment with the person that you chose to marry.
Well, what happens if, because all that makes sense, the person that came to mind when you're explaining that story about having the conversation, getting on the same page, what's our family's core values, is my brother-in-law. He works for WFG. That's financial services for anybody who doesn't know. And it's going to take a lot of work. You're not an employee, so you have to build from the ground up. Mm-hmm. But if you do it right, look at Ed Milet, you can become something like that. They had that conversation where he said, hey, I'm going to have to work my nuts off. It's going to take some time. I'm going to miss some birthday parties, maybe some dinners, some this and that, right? And she was okay with that. She said, I understand you're doing it for the family. That works for them. So they had the conversation in the right time. But let's say somebody didn't. They had the opportunity, because you should be able to talk to your spouse. Yeah. But let's just say they didn't. They kind of missed that mark, and now they have to have the conversation after the fact. What happens is do you feel like the timing is also another thing too? Like, what happens if I think a lot of guys are scared to rock the boat with their spouse, and so they don't even bring up this conversation. And because of that, they end up making holes in other places that didn't need to be there.
That's actually a really good point. And so I'm trying to put myself in that shoes. What would I do? This is after the fact. I'm like, shit, what I should have done is shared my vision and asked if my vision and her vision can align well before we got married. Maybe during that time when we were dating and we got engaged and we talked about a family. Bro, I know people, you may know people who, like, they're married and they finally have the conversation like, hey, I want to have kids. And she'll be like, well, I don't want to have kids, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. And it's like, y'all never talked about having kids?
I know someone like that, yeah.
Is that fucking nuts?
Yeah.
And so, but if I put myself in that person's shoes, right? So now I'm working 12-hour days. Maybe her expectation of this relationship was one thing. So what she had in her mind was one thing. What he had in his mind was another. They never talked about it. Now they got 3 kids, all under 5. I would be like, hey, baby girl, I just realized something. I screwed up. So I'm going to own it all. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to own it all. Baby, I screwed up and I never shared my vision and asked you for your vision of our relationship so that we can get into alignment together and have longevity in our marriage, feel fulfilled, raise our beautiful kids, and still be able to hang out with friends and have date nights and get fit and have decompression time. So since I didn't do that in hindsight, can we have that discussion now? Are you open to it? I own it. I fucked up. I should have had that discussion when we were dating. I didn't think of it. Now that I heard this podcast, I realize I should have that conversation now, but I also realize I'm man enough to own that. So baby, are you open to that? Let's talk about what our future looks like, what we want it to look like. She might be like, dude, I'm cool with living in an apartment and you working 6 hours a day. Whereas you're like, no, I'm going to work 12 hours a day because I want a fucking mansion and a Ferrari. Yeah. Those two visions are so far apart. Somewhere in the middle, there's going to be alignment. And neither one can have regret for that decision. Neither one can hold the other one at a metaphorical gunpoint for that decision. Once you come into alignment, then you have to agree. And so if she agrees, great, we've got alignment, work towards that goal as a team. That's the cool thing about it, man. A husband and wife working as a team produces a magical outcome. Husband and wife also having friction and not working as a team is the most fucking horrible existence on the planet.
Yeah, I can imagine. That I just had to bring this up, man. You know this story already, but that conversation is so crucial to have before you do anything. On a serious note, my wife Betsy, when we were first dating, bring this up. Yeah, exactly. When we were first dating, we had that conversation of, hey, do you want to have kids? Of course, right? And backstory: I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings. She comes from a family of 5, and so 5 siblings. And so she's like, yeah, I want a lot of kids. I said, okay, really, how many? She said 8. I said, nope, that ain't happening with me. I literally reached out and shook her hand. Hey, it was good meeting you. This isn't going to happen. Whatever was a joke, right? And so that was a really uncomfortable, awkward conversation because I was like, I'm cool with 1, maybe 2. And we met in the middle. We said 3. But it was funny because after we had our first, she was like, yeah, I think the number can go down a little bit. Like she was nowhere close to 8. She says, maybe 2, maybe 3, right? So anyways, that conversation is definitely, you got to have it.
That you guys had that conversation. And that's a great example. Like you had that conversation early on. She wanted 8. You're like, hey, I'm an only child, so I could be happy with 1, but can we compromise? And the compromise was 3. And how awesome is that? And that conversation could still be had now. Like people don't realize that, people can compromise. Remember, wars are stopped once they kick off. Like some neighboring country will be like, hey, can we get both of you leaders of these warring countries together? It would have been great if they, before any missile was launched, any bomb was exploded, they would have talked about it. But you didn't. You now have death on both sides. Can you both come out here? Let's see if we can come to a compromise. And there's usually a ceasefire and there's terms and a compromise. So I'm hopeful that if a war can be stopped, like 2 egotistical maniac fucking leaders of countries are willing to kill their own citizens for their ideological views, but then someone who's got a clear head is willing to have a conversation with them and come to a compromise. Surely you and I, as married men, can, after the fact, have a conversation, come into alignment, and have compromise. But it's that conversation that has to happen.